Inside the Birds is back. What's going on, everybody? It is Geoff Mosher and Adam Caplan, another Inside the Birds, and we've got a great two-part series. We're going to start with this podcast. It is our annual 53-man roster projection. We call it our too early one. We're doing it in May. It's not too early. It's fun, and the big thing is the draft is behind, most of free agency behind. Yes, there can be some still moves made, and that would change the projection the next time we do one, but you get a pretty good idea once the draft is over and the UDFA signings are in, which we went through in the last podcast, of what the roster is going to look like. And Adam, when you take it a step further and you start to do the projections, so I have a certain formula where I just immediately start off with the guys who are starters, who I know are on the team, and high draft picks who have, even day three guys have a pretty good shot to make the team. Maybe when you get into the 6th and 7th, you can do a little wiggle room there. But once you get those guys in and locked in and you see how the numbers are, especially on offensive line and at other positions, you all of a sudden realize some of those 1-year prove-it-deal veteran guys may not fit in. That's how I came across Greedy Williams not making a team a couple of years ago because they had numbers and they had drafted guys and I knew they were going to – the numbers didn't work out. So you get an early picture here, and already I'm wondering a few 1-year guys that the Eagles signed that seemed – had to have a role at the time. You wonder if they will.
Yeah, we've done the show for a number of years, and we either do it in May or June, so we're doing it in May now. So my first try on this, where I went through it and looked at, you're trying to find an undrafted free agent to make it, right? I looked at running back. We'll discuss this in a minute. I looked at running back. I'm like, all right, that's a possibility. But when I went through it, I was like, geez, I got 29 players. You're not keeping 29. I got to get down to 26 or 27, realistically. Right. And you know how he likes to keep his draft picks. And that actually cleared some stuff up for me, made it easier because they're going to make it. And then you got to figure a couple things out, which we're going to discuss. There's one issue that we have with this we've not had before. Mm-hmm. It's a multi-positional player who could figure in prominently.
Yep, there is. And there's just a lot of like, you like copy and paste. I had to guy in. Nope, now he's not in because this guy's got to get in there. So it's a really interesting exercise. I've seen yours, and we're generally the same. Again, there's just maybe 4 or 5 guys that, for whatever reasons, you might have them here and I don't, and I do and you don't. So that'll be the fun of going through it. This episode, of course, will be offense. Before we get into that, I do want to go through the major news. The Eagles, as we reported, have lost a very, very valuable and veteran top scout for their front office. He was their senior director of college scouting. His name is Anthony Patch. He leaves for a pretty high-ranking college scouting role with the Las Vegas Raiders. Adam, you'll probably have a better viewpoint on this, but John Spytek, the new GM of the Raiders, who did spend some time with the Eagles under Andy Reid, got to know Anthony Patch there. He is putting together a staff that seemingly, a lot of guys with a lot of experience and, the names that he's put together, whether it's Stiegel from the Jets and Patch, looks like a pretty interesting set of guys that he's starting to put into that Raiders front office.
Yeah, and when new GMs come in, they typically do one of two things. They leave it as is. They want to evaluate the next year, then make changes the following year. With Spytek, he just got in here. He got there in February, and he's making moves. He brings in Anthony Patch, who's a longtime personnel executive for the Eagles. As his final title is director of college scouting, which he held for a number of years. Longest tenured personnel executive in the Eagles department. And then he left, and Howie had second. It was around this. Howie came in after Anthony, didn't he?
Yeah. Anthony was with the team for quite a while before that.
Right. A couple years. So so Patch leaves. That leaves a hole. He's been instrumental in their turnaround. Obviously, Howie turns the card in, but he's a high respect for Patch, and that's a big loss for them. They've lost a lot of people. See, this is why it's important to discuss this. As great as Howie's been, you're only as great as the guys who report to you. If you keep losing big time guys in your scouting department, it's just like Sirianni or what Andy Reid, any head coach. When you keep losing really good coaches, eventually it's going to be a problem. Andy ran out of them here in Philly, by the way. That was part of his downfall in Philly. He lost too many good coaches. Yeah. So, we expect Ryan Myers, Tiny's his nickname, to be promoted. It's a lot. He's the assistant director of college scouting. He's been with the Eagles for a number of years, but look, I mean, really, when you look at it, people want to know, well, why did Patch leave? Well, he lives on the West Coast, so this is a West Coast job. That does mean a lot.
Sure.
It's a much shorter flight. You don't have to travel to the East Coast at all now. Well, now his title is what, senior personnel executive?
Yeah.
Which can mean, by the way, that's all encompassing. It's whatever the GM needs.
Right.
I've talked to a bunch of guys who've had these jobs before. It's, yes, Patch's background's with college, and he certainly will be heavily involved in that. But who knows? He can get to pro advanced. They may add that. Who knows? But it's getting a guy that knows spy tech. That's important. Now, I don't know who Patch knows in terms of the coaching staff and whoever else John's hiring or whoever else John's inheriting. But it's a big job when you're taking over an organization that has been downtrodden for a number of years. They've had so much turnover with the Raiders. It's not going to get done overnight.
No. And you know what? A lot of people go to the Raiders, think that they can be the ones to turn it around, and then realize there are some hardships to deal with that have nothing to do with personnel or scouting. So hopefully we wish Anthony the best. Hope he does a great job there. I mean, I think there's a discussion down the road about what it means if guys leave the Eagles scouting staff and they're not getting GM positions. You know, why? Sure. What is it that was going on that they would make that move? But it's so far right now, it's one guy. Now, I will say this: we got a lot of feedback on Twitter when we put I wrote about it on Philly Voice, and people responded on social media that Howie will be fine because it seems like every year he loses his quote unquote right hand man, whether it's Andy Weidel or whether it was Joe Douglas before that. And I will draw one different distinction between those two guys and Patch. Well, two. One, the first one is Patch was there for 23 years. He established a relationship with both Howie and Jeffrey Lurie that goes beyond just being here a couple of years and being hired as a top executive. He is a part of the fabric. He was there for the losses, the tough ones in the Andy Reid era. He was there for when they won. He was a big part of it. And he is, I would call him Howie's most trusted commandant or lieutenant. Weidel and Joe Douglas had titles that were better, but they weren't there as long. And I would say that just from what we know, yes, they're fine, but like the attachment, the dependability, the relationship between Patch and the organization is a lot bigger than it was for those other two. I mean, the guy had been there for a really long time. And if you ever watch when the camera pans onto the Eagles war room, if you're watching NFL Network or ESPN coverage, you will see HowieRoseman, Jeffrey Lurie, and sitting next to them is quite often Anthony Patch. So that just goes to show you how much of a important guy he was. So he's not just like anybody else. He is a true right hand. He was.
Yeah, because remember, Weidel and Joe Douglas came from other organizations. He did. Anthony, he might have been technically with the Dolphins. Was he
1 year as an intern? It was 1 year.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But honestly, his real job was with the Eagles. And now he could have taken jobs with other organizations over the years, as we understand it. But he out of loyalty, and he'd always been treated well and paid well. So one thing, you talk to people who work under the Eagles under Howie, they get paid really well. But also, when you're Patch, you live on the West Coast. Washington State, is that area somewhere on there?
Washington State.
Right. So this keeps them on the West Coast. Sometimes also, I think you come to a point in your career, you're up for new challenges. You just won another Super Bowl, his second. Spytek's won Super Bowls before with the Bucks, and he might have won with the Broncos, if I'm not mistaken.
I think he was there for that, yeah.
Yeah, and John's a really good executive. So this is and you bring in a winning culture. And Pete Carroll, obviously, he's won a lot of games. He won a Super Bowl with the Seahawks. So that I'll be interested to see how quickly, if they can ever get that thing turned around.
Well, listen, like I said, Spytek's certainly bringing in the type of people, and then of course Pete Carroll's won a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
So the Raiders certainly have a different look, but will they be the same old Raiders is the big question. All right, let's get into our 53-man roster projection. Now we're going to start off doing offense in this episode, and then we'll move on to defense in the next one. So with offense, Adam, we start at the most important position. It is a position where you and I both have the numbers matching. The Eagles are going to keep 3 quarterbacks, and you and I have the same 3 guys, and This one might have been the least difficult to figure out. Jalen Hurts, Tanner McKee. And I think really the question was, would Kyle McCord beat out Dorian Thompson-Robinson? And we say, yes, the draft pick will beat out the guy acquired in a trade. It wouldn't surprise me if they're still able to get DTR back on the practice squad if they want to use a mobile quarterback as a look team guy.
Yeah, so Thompson-Robinson is subject to waivers. So if it goes like we both see it, if McCord beats out DTR, he would have to not be claimed off waivers. Then, on your point, he could be signed in the practice squad. And it, as a scout team player, that's an important job, by the way. You're mimicking what the opponent does, so that would have some value. But that's the battle. That's really it. To be honest with you, it's for the third job. Tanner McKee is going to be the backup. They know that internally. It's just there's no. Oh yeah, they could say publicly everybody's competing because that's coach speak. We get through the coach speak. McKee's going to be the 2, and we'll see what happens with the 3. You know, maybe Thompson-Robinson just needed a change of scenery, and he becomes a much better quarterback. But I know the Browns were looking to move him, so he became available to move, and the Eagles brought him in. The Eagles liked him, as we mentioned when they was acquired. Howie liked him a lot for that draft 3 years ago. But now they've got Kyle McCord and Tanner McKee, sort of like the next phenom at quarterback. We'll see. We'll see what happens. I found it interesting that they traded Kenny Pickett and not McKee, though. I'm very interested to see how that works out for both teams.
Yeah, that's a great point. All right, let's move on to running backs I think I may have detected a flaw. I don't like to call. I mean, listen, you're a smart guy, so maybe this is not a flaw. I think you left somebody out that, on second thought, you might put in. But I understand why you might have left him out, or I'm just looking too deeply into it and you don't think this guy is going to make the team. I have, just like you, 4 running backs. We both have Saquon Barkley. We both have Will Shipley. We both have Avery Williams because that's the classroom he's going to be in. You had A.J. Dillon. I did not.
Oh.
I do have Ben Van Sumeren, the fullback.
Oh, I totally forgot. Yes, I forgot. Yes,
Okay.
yes. You know what? Oh, man. And Jeffrey's been quoted, he was on WIP, I guess, like they want to bring the fullback back. Well, Van Sumeren will make it.
How happy was John Ritchie, by the way, in that?
Oh, yeah, John. Yeah, with Hopefully to camera. Yeah, that's great. We got to get John on our show.
Oh, that would be
John
great.
and I go way back, man. Yeah, John's a great guy. I would say, yeah. See, this becomes a problem. Mm-hmm. I had a hard enough time. All right, so since you pointed this out, I'm going to adjust. I will adjust another position. Okay, I'm putting Ben Van Sumeren on my roster. Okay. Barkley, Dillon, Shipley, and Avery Williams. See, I wanted to put Montreal Johnson on here.
That's a good one, too.
I wanted to, but I read you can't cut Avery Williams as a punt kickoff returner. Nope. Plus, man, Sirianni went like crazy at the owners' meetings. He's like, remember when we were like so taken aback, like he couldn't stop talking about him?
The first guy that he mentioned among all
of all people. I was like, oh, okay, because what happened with that one? I before I got the transcript, I played it. You know, I played the audio, but I wasn't watching.
Right.
And then I'm like, man, what is going on? Why does he keep talking about him? And then I put the stick back to replay it. I'm like, this is crazy. He's been talking 3 minutes about this guy. All right, he's on our roster. There's no way they're cutting him. And by the way, I'm pretty certain he got more guaranteed money than A.J. Dillon, but I'm gonna double check that one.
So yeah, I mean, Avery Williams getting more money and how they gushed over him. I just couldn't keep like too many running backs because there were other areas like O-line and D-line that I needed to keep more guys. So I just thought Barkley, Shipley, Avery Williams, Van Sumeren, that's 4. That's enough. You could get. I also thought the same about Montreal Johnson because I'm intrigued by him, but you can probably get him on the practice squad because he's a running back and those guys don't get claimed very often. So I don't have A.J. Dillon on my 53.
That's a big one. Wow. Well, here's the question.
Who did you say you were removing when you put Van Sumeren on?
I haven't gotten to that yet.
Oh,
I'll
okay.
get to that. But here's the problem.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the issue. And this is why I can't see it. Unless Dillon looks bad, I just don't see it happening. If Barkley gets hurt, what's the answer? Well, Shipley's not an answer. He you don't know what he can handle because he didn't really do anything last year. And physically, you need someone who can handle volume. The Eagles are a volume running team. I'd be very surprised if that happened if Dillon is back to normal.
Mm-hmm.
Now, on your point though, now Montreal Johnson is decent size. That's a big ask for an undrafted free agent. We know what Corey Clement did as a rookie. That was incredible. And this guy's got good size here. Maybe like if they're going to cut Dillon, the guarantee on his contract is much smaller than Avery Williams. It's under $200,000. Avery Williams got $400,000 fully guaranteed at signing,
right?
Because Dillon's coming off a major injury. But you need to find someone with size if Barkley gets hurt.
I'm going to give you the answer to that question. It's not a great answer, but I think it's a very realistic and feasible answer given the nature of the position. They'll have a veteran running back on the practice squad, no doubt about it.
I see. So
now that guy's not going to be Barkley, but he and is going to combine with Jalen Hurts' ability to run and Will Shipley having a bigger year, and that's how they're going to compensate for it.
Well, then maybe they do the roster tango, which we've called for 10 years now, or whatever it is, 8 years. That maybe they do that where they just work it out with the agent. Hey, listen, we can't keep you because we've got a numbers issue. Would you be willing to stay here? And we'll call you up. And then eventually, some teams do this. They say, wink, wink, nod, nod. We're going to eventually add you to our 53 for good. But we got to get past these first 3 weeks or 4 weeks because we just don't have the room,
Right. And by the way, that could be A.J. Dillon. If he doesn't make the 53 for the Eagles, and people don't think he's that great. Yeah, you're right. It could be A.J. Dillon or a different veteran on the practice squad.
Yeah, he's not subject to waivers, by the way. It's a contract terminated. So
there you go. All right. So then we move on to wide receiver. Now you kept 6. I kept 5.
I did keep 6 originally, but when you told me about Van Sumer, I totally forgot. I'm putting him on the roster. Then I'm going to make a change here. So
give me your 6.
All right. Brown, Smith, Dotson, Marshall, who got $25,000 fully guaranteed at signing, form of signing bonus. The blocking receiver, Johnny Wilson. And I'm going to waive Ainias Smith off the roster. Now, he's a backup slot receiver and a punt returner. Well, guess what? Avery Williams could handle both. I mean, it can handle punt return. That is where you got to get skinny on your roster. You can't keep everybody, man. Because Howie's history of keeping the draft picks, he's subject to waivers. If he doesn't get claimed, he goes to the practice squad. Fair.
Okay, so they're going to cut, in your mind, the guy you're getting off for Ben Van Sumer is Ainias Smith.
Yep, I got to sacrifice someone, man.
Not the one I thought you were going to sacrifice. That's really interesting.
Really? Because,
I thought you would sacrifice Terrace Marshall because I just can't see Marshall and Dotson both on this team. They're too much of the same guy. In fact, I have neither of them making mine.
Marshall's got size, which you like, and he runs way better than Johnny Wilson. Now, you can make a case based on what happens in training camp. If Wilson doesn't improve, you can't keep a guy on the roster just because he can block. We're just moving to tight end then,
Yeah. Well, that parlays well into my 5, Adam.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. What's your 6 or 5 receivers?
My 5 are A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Ainias Smith, Johnny Wilson, and Danny Gray. Why do I have
Gray? Whoa.
Danny Gray. Now, you said they need somebody to be able to, return punts who may not be Avery Williams, right? Danny Gray has speed. Danny Gray is a guy who played really well last year on the practice squad. As Andrew DeCecco reported, he was turning a lot of heads. So I put him on the 53. I took Jahan Dotson out because if you're going to have, in my view here, as Ainias Smith and Johnny Wilson and Danny Gray, then where's the role for Jahan Dotson? What's his Adam? Give me his contract.
Well, first of all, by the way, Danny Gray in college only returned 9 kicks and only 2 punts.
Right, but I thought they had him working there last year when he came.
They did. I saw him on kickoffs. I did see him on kickoffs. So, who do you want to know?
I want to know Jahan Dotson. Do they save money if he's not on the roster?
No, his salary is fully guaranteed, $2.8 million. Yeah, and they would take on all that in dead money if they cut him. They would be cap hit, so they would not save any money.
I'm going to have to make a change then because I, for some reason, thinking that drained to the Commanders, but
no, the signing bonus that the Commandos were responsible for, not the salaries of the Eagles' responsibility.
You're correct. Okay, so Jahan Dotson is in, Danny Gray is now out, and they'll just figure it out.
Yes, another guy. Well, if he's not claimed, try to get him on the practice squad. Sure.
There you go. All right, good stuff. Now, the reason I kept Johnny Wilson as the blocking wide receiver is because in my scenario, the 3 tight ends are Grant Calcaterra, Harrison Bryant, and Kylan Granson, and there is no Dallas Goedert because I still think at the end of the day he's going to wind up being moved And, I'll change it and adjust it if that's not the case in our next one, but that's mine. So that's why I have Johnny Wilson as that blocking quote wide receiver among my group. What do you got?
So I've got Goddard staying. They just were unable to trade him for the draft. So he's here. He's on a contract. I don't expect him to play at $15.25 million. That's not guaranteed.
Mm-hmm.
Expect the number to be different, smaller. We'll see what that winds up if it winds up happening like I probably believe it'll happen. Yeah, I say it like that because it just makes too much sense that Dallas has got to understand. Not that the Eagles would do this, but they have leverage here. They could cut him if they wanted to because there's no guaranteed money. It makes them worse.
Right.
But Goddard, to me, because he does everything well. He's had one thing that's happened in his career. He just can't stay healthy. He's just had the terrible luck.
Right.
It's not like it's a bunch of chronic injuries. He doesn't have chronic problems at all. It's just the arm fracture. When it was against Washington or whoever it was on like a Monday night game, he was going downfield and he stuck his arm out and an arm fracture. He's had some tough injuries,
Mm-hmm.
So, I've got a Goddard, Calcaterra, and Harrison Bryant only keeping 3. This is another one with Kylan Grant said, hey, Kylan said to the agent, we want you, which we can't keep 4 tight ends.
Mm-hmm.
So would you mind going to the practice squad? Because he's not subject to waivers. He's vested. So you ask him if they're willing to do it. If he's willing to, we want him back.
All right. With Dallas Goedert, do you see any scenario where the Eagles would just outright cut him?
No.
Okay. So then he has all the leverage, right?
No, they do. No. Joe Banner told us years ago that a situation like this, you have to be willing to cut the player.
But you just told me the Eagles are not going to cut him.
They're not going to do that. Yeah,
So he has the leverage. He shows up to work.
Yeah, but no. But listen, they know the agency pretty well. They've dealt with. I guess they're called Excel now. They used to be Rep 1.
Right.
I can't. They didn't. Listen, if they drafted a tight end in the first or second round, totally different. They didn't draft a tight end.
I know. My only point is Dallas Goedert doesn't have to take a pay cut. He can get the money that he's owed because they're not going to cut him.
No, but here's the thing. Let's say they did cut him, right? He's not getting anywhere close to $15 million.
But I know. But you have to. So Joe Banner's right. You have to be willing to cut the player.
Yeah.
So if you're the player, do you call their bluff? Because you just
call their bluff.
There's no way the Eagles would cut outright Dallas.
See, that's a great point. If you're the agent or agency who, you know that they're nowhere as good. Now you take a gamble. You don't want to hurt your client. You don't want to call their bluff and say, hey, listen, the Eagles didn't draft a tight end. They know they don't have a starting tight end. Harrison Bryant, we like as a backup, but he's not a starting tight end.
Mm-hmm.
That's a gamble, man. This is a really interesting conversation. I really believe that Howie will wind up in Dallas coming to their senses and finding out a way to get a contract that Dallas is willing to accept. And Eagles, the money, because remember, as we reported 2 months ago, whatever the hell it was, this is a money situation. It's zero to do with the cap. It was strictly a cash issue, what they're willing to pay him, and willing to live with, quite frankly. And it's going to be interesting, and it is fascinating that you go back now 4 years when Ertz was traded, and then they extended Goddard's contract shortly after they traded Zach.
Mm-hmm.
It's really interesting, but they didn't draft Goddard's. See, that's if you want to say where does he have any leverage, it's based on what you said. And adding the fact that they did not draft a tight end, because yeah, right.
In terms of a tight end, I would totally agree with you. He's really in a tough spot.
But again, there's no guaranteed money, and no one is paying him. He's got the veteran minimum salary plus the non-guaranteed option bonus, which is due closer to the start of the season.
Right.
So they don't have to do anything now. But here's the thing: we talked about this before the draft. If you're Goddard, if you're Goddard, you decide to show up. The Eagles could say, "Listen, we can't afford you dropping a weight on your chest." This has happened before in the NFL,
right? Where
you can't pass a physical, then we can't trade you, or we'd be liable due to injury protection,
right?
So it's a tough deal, man. It's a shame it came down to this. The Eagles tried; other teams told us this,
but they can't lock him out. That's the point. They can mutually agree on that, but he still has to get paid the money while he's on the roster. So unless the Eagles are willing to cut him, that he does have some leverage because they owe him the money. If he's on the roster, they owe him the money.
Yeah, but they owe to him again unless they decide to call his bluff. You know what I'm saying? I'm just like not that he's bluffing, not that he's challenging him, but you know what I mean. They're like,
yeah, But
if you
what's
had
the
a
bluff?
standoff,
Like, he's not going to
I
hold
don't
out.
see it.
You just show up.
I don't see it like this is not an earth situation that the Eagles were ever considering cutting him. That's not what I mean.
Right.
They had a disagreement on the second year of the contract, as we were told then.
Mm-hmm.
This is 4 years ago, but the one thing I do remember is they could not agree on the second year, and because the Eagles knew in the back of their minds they were going to extend Goddard's contract, so you can't pay two tight ends good money, and it's hard to do. So we'll see what happens here. But I in my estimation, the way I see this, cooler heads prevailing here and finding a way to keep Dallas Leaf for 1 year. I mean, you could do an extension. You could do whatever the heck you want to lower his cap number, but the big thing is you lower the cash. You could also lower his cap number. And then, as you noted, to spread the cap head out, if they're going to give him a signing bonus to guarantee some of it, just to make him happy. Because you want to at least give him the solace of, okay, let's guarantee some of the contract for you. That way, we're definitely, no matter what happens, we're not cutting you. That's I've talked to agents before about this over the years. They do believe that. So the player wants to know absolutely that they're not going to pull a fast one on him, though they have a pretty good relationship as we understand it.
There you go. Yeah, they've handled this. I mean, Howie's handled it well in the public face. He has said good things. Yeah. So we'll see what happens with that. But the reason that we have this conversation is the reason that I still think he's going to wind up getting moved before the start of the season. So we'll see. So we go on to tight end. I'm sorry, not tight end. We finish off with offensive line, and you and I.
Real quick. So
yeah,
you have a Granson, Calcaterra, and Bryant. Is that what you have?
Yeah. Those are my three.
Could they Jimmy rig it? Yeah, I mean they could for like 6-7 games, but man, Goddard's.
It's awful. Trust me, I did not arrive with that one easily.
Yeah, geez. If I'm Howie and the pro personnel staff, if I'm Howie, I'm sending every pro scout that I have go to. They can't go to another camp, but watch every preseason game. Find someone who could potentially block and catch. Anyway.
Yeah. Well, EJ Jenkins is still there, and I have a feeling he'll be on the practice squad. And he's a big guy at 260, and they've been developing his blocking.
Yeah, true.
All right. So the amazing thing about offensive line for you and I is that there's 10. We both kept 10, and it is the same exact 10.
Oh, see, I haven't seen yours. You've seen mine because I just said in my email. So,
yep. But I didn't look at yours until I swear to everybody, I did not look at yours until I finished mine.
This was tough because they brought Matt Pryor back. They're not paying him very much.
Right.
And he's got positional versatility. Holland Pierce, I know he's a total project.
Yep.
Just under 6'9". He's the kind of guy who's perfect for a practice squad, but you got to waive him first. Yeah. And again, nobody drafted him, so you never know. And Trevor Keegan was a draftee last year. Other teams told us they were concerned about his upper body, shoulders, and so forth. So it's not easy. So here's what I've got. Right tackles, Lane Johnson, Cameron Williams, who's a developmental right tackle.
Right.
Mailata, Kendall Lamb, who'll be the swing tackle, right or backup left tackle. And Miles Hinton, who can play right or left tackle. How he keeps his draftees.
Yep.
There you go. There's 4. Guards, Dickerson, Steen, and Kenyon Green. Centers, Juergens and Drew Kendall. Drew Kendall, talking to various teams about him, nobody really sees him as a guard. They don't think he's strong enough. They think he's better off at center. Could he play guard? Yes, if you needed him to, but he's really a center.
Right.
So those are my 10. I ran out of room. I wanted to keep 11. It came down to Kennard, Pryor, Keegan, and then versus releasing Lamb, who's a vested veteran. Lamb's got significant starting experience. Again, he could start at right or left tackle, and I felt Lamb was a better one for them to keep.
So I agree with you there. I felt like Hinton and Cameron Williams are sort of developmental guys that they drafted, and I don't know that are pro ready to play right now. You want your veteran swing tackle like Fred Johnson the last few years to have some experience.
Important.
So I couldn't cut Kendall Lamb. I really wrestled with Kenyon Green actually, but he's on the contract. They owe him just like with Jahan Dotson, right? You trade for him, you owe him the salary. So the one I had the most uncomfortable feeling about cutting, but I did it, and so did you, was Trevor Keegan, only because he was a draft pick and it's his second year. And even, did he play a little bit in that Giants game? I think he did play against the Giants. And I just couldn't, listen, it wouldn't surprise me if he did make the team and maybe Cameron Williams is cut or somebody else, but we know that they like to keep their picks, the most recent ones. So Trevor Keegan, he's sort of limited by the fact that he's really only a left guard. Hasn't shown yet that he can play both. He's sort of like that Sua Opeta type where you'd have to be able to train him to play both, and that's really all he can do.
Yeah, so Kenyon Green's making just under $2.9 million fully guaranteed.
Yep.
Plus, this is a guy they liked for that draft. They had a first-round grade on in 2022. We have to see how it play. We have to see how he performs. But if he performs, he'll be on the team, no doubt about it. And then, other than that, you're right on Cameron Williams. He's a total project. He's a one-position player. They see him as a right tackle, though his measurables are amazing. But they really see him as the league does as a right tackle. I just don't see Howie, again, cutting a draft pick. Now, would he be claimed? That's a good question. I would say this. You and I have run his name around with a lot of people around the league. Not a lot of love for him because he's a developmental project that needs a lot of work.
Right.
But, man, you can't coach measurables. You can't make them. He's born with them, man. And it's the player needs coaching. And they've got the best in the business. I would put Stalin at one of the best in NFL history. We've not said that before, but he's got such – I'll say this. Talking to other offensive line coaches, there's such reverence for him.
Mm-hmm.
There's just a lot of love for the guys. I guess he does like to mentor younger coaches that he meets at the combine and so forth. People really speak highly of him outside the organization, not just the organization.
Oh, gosh. Yeah, it's hard to run into someone who doesn't like Geoff Stoutland or doesn't appreciate what he's been able to do. So there we have it. We agreed on the 10 offensive linemen. We agreed on the 3 running backs as well. And then there was just a little bit of few here and there with the running back, wide receiver, and tight end. In the next episode, we will do the defense. By the way, what was the total number of offensive players you wind up keeping? Mine was 26.
So it would be 26 because the one change that I made was I waived Anais Smith and I kept Ben Van Sumeren because you reminded me of the fullback, and there you go. So it's still 26.
Got it.
One of the other reasons why I like doing this is, in front offices they have these issues because they look at, okay, where are we heavy, where are we thin, how are we going to work this through a practice squad? Okay, we're thin here. We need to have guys on the practice squad at this position. These kind of discussions that front offices have,
all the time. Absolutely. All right, mine was 25. So we'll keep that in mind for when we do defense. All right, that's going to do it for this episode of Inside the Birds, the leading podcast in Eagles intel. And as always, we thank you for flying with us inside the birds. Be sure to check out our friends at PHLSportsNation.com. They're enhancing the fans' experience with their coverage of all Philadelphia sports teams. For the fan, by the fan is their motto. So make sure you check them out at PHLSportsNation.com and on Twitter at PHLSportsNation.